What's up guys, Om here from Everything and welcome to this new video. So Apple just wrapped up the latest Unleashed October event and there's so much to cover. So let's get started. So this event was about music and the Mac, and they start off the event with talking about the Apple Music voice plan. I really didn't get what they were trying to do with this. From my understanding, for half the price of the normal pack for individuals, you'll get only access to Apple Music via Siri instead of the app, and if you're using a HomePod and a HomePod only exclusively for Apple Music, then I think it makes sense to go for that, but I think otherwise it's just not useful at all. And the HomePod Mini now comes with 3 new colors: blue, orange and yellow, and it'll go really well with the 24-inch iMac. The AirPods 3, which were long awaited, have finally been announced, and they come with a very similar design to the AirPods Pro while keeping the non-rubber tip design of the classic AirPods, which is a fan favorite. We also now get wireless charging as a standard, starting at the same price as the AirPods 2, and we also now get MagSafe for the first time on AirPods. And something that I found really confusing though is that the free AirPods offer with which I got these AirPods is now discontinued, and it was supposed to be here till the November 4th, but it's just gone now and it doesn't really make any sense. But coming to Macs, the real important stuff, we now have 2 new Apple Silicon chips for the Macs, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max. And yes, the latter really does sound like M1 Max, and this is MACS I'm talking about. With the M1 Pro, something I found out is that the base variant of the M1 Pro only comes with an 8-core CPU, which is a bummer, and it is slightly better than the M1 just because of the fact that it has 8 performance cores and 2 efficiency cores instead of 4 efficiency and high performance cores on the M1. It should be slightly better, but not that much better as compared to the M1 in terms of CPU. But you do get the other upgrades that come with the M1 Pro even at the base variant. And both the M1 Pro and M1 Max share the same 10-core CPU, but what they do get differently is a 16-core GPU at the maximum on the M1 Pro and a 32-core GPU at the maximum on the M1 Max, which is incredibly good. And finally, we get multiple monitors, more than 2 of them with Apple Silicon, and this time not 1, not 2, but 3 Pro Display XDRs and a television with the M1 Max, which is really good. And thanks to Apple this time for mentioning which CPU and GPU they're comparing the latest chip to. Okay, now coming to the real thing, the new MacBooks. They're absolutely stunning. Now they do have a notch, which I'll talk about in a bit, but this notch brings super thin bezels and rounded corners for the first time. We now have a ton of ports, an HDMI port, a headphone jack, an SD card reader, 3 USB-C ports and MagSafe 3rd generation. And the touch bar is now gone. But replacing that, we get full-size function keys, and we also do get a black keyboard even between the keys, which is pretty nice. On the larger MacBook, you're getting a 16.2-inch display, and on the smaller one, you're getting a 14.2-inch display. Now, the increase in size of the display is only for the notch. So let's talk about the notch for a minute. We now know where the 20% of the iPhone notch went to. But jokes aside, this notch isn't as bad as I thought it would be. So the way that Apple has implemented it, if you didn't notice already, is that the menu bar is now thicker to accommodate the notch, and no content will extend to the top of the display no matter what. It'll only be kept to the menu bar or just black space. So it's going to be pretty fine, to be honest. But if you have a colorful wallpaper and aren't in full screen, you'll still be able to see the notch. But good news, I'm working on something which lets you get rid of this notch, and by the time this video comes out, it might even be ready, and if it is, I'll leave the link in the description or the comment section. And we finally get ProMotion on Macs, and along with Mini LED, this makes the best display in any laptop. All of this combined makes the MacBook Pro very thick, and it almost reminds me of the unibody MacBooks from 10 years ago. And let me just go over some of the minor but important features. We now have a 1080p camera with better low light performance, new mics and a 6-speaker sound system, and the MacBook Pro text on the front has now been removed. The battery life is just phenomenal, with up to 21 hours of video playback compared to 17 hours on the old Mac. With this new Apple Silicon chip, we now get 7.4 gigabytes per second as the SSD speed, which is just mind-boggling because we already have 2 gigabytes per second and it feels like buttery smooth, and this is going to be, well, mega buttery smooth. We now have fast charging on the Macs with up to 50% battery life in just 30 minutes. And we also do get up to 8 terabytes of storage. The MacBook Pro 14-inch starts at 2 lakh rupees in India and $2,000 in the US. And the MacBook Pro 16-inch starts at $2,500 in the US and 2,40,000 rupees in India. Both of which are way more expensive than this iMac, which is nearly maxed out. And those prices are really high. But of course, we need to keep in mind that these aren't consumer level products. These are for the real pros. Also, something that was completely ignored is that we now have object tracking inbuilt into Final Cut, which is going to be really awesome because I recently needed it for one of my videos, the iMac video to be specific, which you should totally watch, but I ended up not going that way and using a different intro altogether. But I wish I did have object tracking back then. But now that it's here, it's going to make things a lot better. And we can also edit cinematic mode video directly in Final Cut after you've done recording. So that's pretty nice too. And the event production was top notch as always. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. That's it for this one. And if you enjoyed it, do click the subscribe button and like button. And if you want more of such content, do check out my 24-inch iMac review. I'm sure you'll love it. That's my best video ever. And I'll see you in the next one.